San Francisco 49ers.
Oh, we're going San Fran next?
Oh, I've been to San Francisco.
I had Seattle up.
Yeah. It's the only time in my entire life I saw human shit and human shit, where a human actually defecated in front of me. It was disgusting. But I like the city. It's fun. It was kind of interesting. It was literally first 15 minutes I was in San Francisco.
Is it as hilly as it's portrayed on?
It's very, very hilly.
Okay.
It's the hilliest place I've ever been to. I mean, Jack and Jill would love it. They would absolutely love this place. So let's talk about their depth chart. At quarterback, we got Jimmy Garoppolo, Trey Lance, the future, Josh Rosen. That's right, Josh Rosen's still here.
Chosen Rosen.
Oh, running back, Raheem Mostert, Trey Sermon, who they trade up in the 3rd round to acquire, Wayne Gallman, Elijah Mitchell, who they took in the 6th round, Jeff Wilson, who has a torn meniscus and probably won't just start the season right away, and JaMychal Hasty. Rich, why are you talking about so many running backs? Because who knows getting all the carries because they use a ton of them. They're all getting carries. At wide receiver, Brandon Ayuk, Deebo Samuel, Mohamed Sanu, Richie James, Jalen Hurd, and our guy, Austin Watkins. Hope he makes the team. Tight end, George Kittle, Ross Dwelly, Nicole Pruitt. So, a lot of guys missed the majority of the year last year for the San Francisco 49ers. Jimmy Garoppolo missed 10 games. Deebo Samuel missed 9 games. George Kittle missed 8 games. Raheem Mostert missed 8 games. So a lot of their fantasy football they just missed games. I mean, they didn't even that core. Jimmy Garoppolo and his 3 core receivers only played 2 games together last year, which isn't crazy.
Was it the first 2 games?
No, it wasn't the first 2 games.
Oh, wasn't?
No, it was later in the year.
Okay.
And there was one of the games where Jimmy, I remember Jimmy started the game. It was right after he got hurt. He came back and he played so bad they pulled him at halftime because I think his ankle wasn't right or something along those lines. But of course, the big news here at quarterback is they gave up 2 future firsts to move up to number 2 from I think was at 12 somewhere around there. To draft Trey Lance, and this is gonna be the first mobile quarterback that he's had at Kyle Shanahan since RG3. Remember he had RG3 his rookie year, he was rookie of the year over a guy like Andrew Luck, and Trey Lance can run the ball. And this is a guy who averaged 7.9 yards per carry in college. Now, not a lot of tape on Trey Lance. He only pretty much played a year.
Yeah, he only had that single season, but he didn't throw a single interception that entire season. He looked fantastic, and the tough part is, yes, it's against lower competition.
2 years ago,
but you have to scout the player and not necessarily the situation. And I think that's what the San Francisco 49ers did. They said, look, this guy has all of the tools that we need to develop into a great quarterback. Now, will it all pan out? Odds are a couple of these first-round quarterbacks won't end up panning out. Traditionally, even if you have 2, 3, 4, 5 quarterbacks in the first round, there's 1 or 2 that don't hit. Is there a chance Trey Lance could be that guy? Sure.
Highest odds, for sure.
I'd say Mac Jones.
I forgot. He doesn't even count. Mac Jones does count. I think of because I really do. I like Trey Lance's upside. I love Trevor Lawrence. I like Justin Fields, and I love Zach Wilson. So I think it'd be one like that Eli Manning draft where they're all kind of nice. But go on.
I definitely think that could be the case. But when we talked about the rushing upside of Kyler Murray, when we talked about the rushing upside of Lamar Jackson, he could end up being in the echelon, but he's built more similar to Cam Newton. He's built more. I mean, he was being scouted out of high school to play defensive positions. We're talking safety and linebacker and positions like that.
Could have been WWE superstar.
He really could have. So I think the upside with Trey Lance is there, but there's obvious risk involved with any of these rookie quarterbacks. And it came out today that said there's not any quarterback controversy to start the year. It's going to be Jimmy Garoppolo to start the year. Now, how long is that the case?
Oh, Trey Lance hasn't even signed his contract yet, so.
That's true. That's a good point. I do think that's going to be an interesting development because this reminds me a little bit, and I can't take full credit for this. I was listening to the Athletic podcast, as I mentioned earlier, and they made this comparison, and I think it's a really good one. They compared it to when Patrick Mahomes was drafted by the Chiefs, where it's a good football team, and you have a quarterback in place that is good enough to get you W's.
To a Super Bowl.
Well, Alex Smith didn't get the Chiefs to the Super Bowl.
Jimmy Garoppolo did.
But Jimmy Garoppolo got this team to the Super Bowl, absolutely. So, and Alex Smith ended up playing basically that entire year, and Patrick Mahomes just kind of had to sit and wait. That very well could be the case because this defense alone could put this team in contention, and it could just be a situation where we need a guy to manage the game. That's all we need.
Jimmy G.
So there could actually be some sneaky quarterback value in Jimmy Garoppolo this year in Superflex leagues. The tough part is if he were to be benched, chances are it would be later on in the season when you're going to need him. So that's the difficult part with all of that. But there's definitely some sneaky value there. And I don't hate Jimmy Garoppolo just from a depth standpoint. But obviously the future is going to be Trey Lance.
Yeah, 100%. And he's such a high upside player in Superflex leagues.
What week does he start? What's his first start?
I think the 49ers if they stay healthy, contention
It's assuming
long enough,
Jimmy G's healthy.
Then I think they stay in contention enough where he doesn't play. He doesn't play until they're out of it.
Yeah, I think that's the case as well. And
he needs to sit. Like, he needs to sit and learn NFL offense.
This is going to be a very competitive division too. We haven't gotten to the Seahawks yet, but you could make an argument for any one of these 4 teams winning the division.
You mentioned their defense is really good. They have some really good offensive weapons at receiver. They have Deebo Samuel. They have Brandon Ayuk out there as well. Ayuk last year finished the year as wide receiver 35 in 12 games. And he averaged 15.4 points per game, which was 18th best amongst all wide receivers. He had 60 receptions for 748 yards and 5 touchdowns. I like Ayuk. I thought he showed me enough last year. My only concern is, like, when Kittle was on the field and Deebo on the field, like, it wasn't the same. Like, his targets weren't as, obviously George Kittle's the number one guy there. The offense runs through George Kittle, hands down. But Deebo Samuel, to me, is my favorite value on the San Francisco 49ers. Maybe George Kittle's seen a dip in value a little bit, and he's the best value there. But I don't know if that's really true.
I remember having a debate with Matt probably a month and a half ago or so, and it was about this situation where, you know, we have George Kittle on the field, we have Brandon Ayuk on the field, and we have Deebo Samuel on the field. This team is going to continue to run the football. It doesn't matter who's back there. They're going to hand it to whoever line. It could be Kyle Juszczyk that week for all we know. Like, they're going to hand the ball to somebody for a bulk of the game. And so that's the part that scares me. I don't think there's a world where Deebo and Brandon Ayuk in the same season with George Kittle, all 3 being healthy, I don't think there's a scenario where they can both be top 30 wide receivers. I just don't think it's possible.
Yeah, I mean, they're probably, like, I think Ayuk still flirts with right around like wide receiver 35, where he is, like, maybe a little bit higher, could be a wide receiver 3 around there. What interests me about Deebo, and why I like Deebo a ton, is I loved him coming out, right? Now, obviously, he had that foot injury, the Jones fracture. And he actually had off-season surgery on it. Then he came back. He had a hamstring injury last year. Played in just 7 games. He had 33 carries, 33 receptions for 391 yards and 1 touchdowns. But if you go back to 2019, when Deebo came out as a rookie, a guy who we liked a lot on this podcast, we talked up,
absolutely,
gave to pretty much a late first-round grade to in your rookie draft, 57 receptions, 802 yards, 3 touchdowns. And he rushed the ball for 159 yards and 3 touchdowns. And what I love about him and how he's used is he's such a weapon with the ball in his hands. We have to remember Deebo Samuel, when he gets the ball in his hands, becomes pretty much like a running back. And this is a guy who breaks tons of tackles at the next level. When you get him in open field, he breaks tackles. And Ayuk's a real smooth, nice receiver, shifty, but I think Deebo Samuel is a weapon on the field. And I think when it comes to receiver standpoint, I think he's where the value is. Ayuk saw his value shut up. I think it's a little bit inflated because you're talking about a guy where people are like, oh, he's now the number 1 guy. It's not. It's George Kittle. Even then, like, he didn't break out like he's Justin Jefferson, wide receiver 6. He was wide receiver 35. Yeah. I mean, and I know they had a ton of injuries there, even at quarterback, and the quarterbacks throwing the ball there. Mine was with my Uncle Jeb from Wyoming. I don't have an Uncle Jeb in Wyoming, but I did.
I really wanted you to.
So to me, I think his value is slightly overrated, and I think Deebo Samuel's slightly underrated.
Let me ask you, so the one concern I would, other than the injuries, because he's been injured basically forever. He's college, pros, he's always been injured. Yeah. But are you concerned about the league low 2.3 ADOT last year? Because it was drastically lower than anybody else in the league. Now, I get that a lot of that is intentional. They're throwing it close to the line of scrimmage, but we've seen a positive correlation to higher ADOT guys having better fantasy production.
Yeah, I think that we could be arguing the same point about Robert Woods and Cooper Kupp, how their ADOT was so bad because they were a victim of their circumstances.
But it's probably going to be the same circumstances this year.
I think Jimmy Garoppolo will throw the ball a little bit farther than those other turd Fergusons out there last year. So to me, I just, and the thing is, I think that more worries me about a guy like Brandon Ayuk more than it does Deebo, because Deebo's so electric with the ball in his hands. Okay. He'll make stuff happen afterwards. Like, I like Debo more with the ball in his hands. Hence, going back to where I think that's where the value is. And I think you could scoop Debo Samuel up for some pretty good value because he was hurt last year. So his dynasty value is a little bit more suppressed than I think it needs to be. I'm still a big Debo fan, going to his third year, which is a great year for all fantasy football players to take a big step forward with the upside of Trey Lance coming in too. So I think I'm more worried about injuries than anything else with Debo Samuel. But I still think that's where the value is. If you're looking for a receiver, is not Brandon Ayuk. I like Ayuk. I think it's good value. And if you're going to start up right around like round 6, 7, right around there, I think it's a good shot to take on him. But at the same time, you can wait till round 9 and get a guy like Debo Samuel.
If you had to pick one running back right now, which one are you drafting first?
I'm taking Trey Sermon.
You're taking him over Mostert?
Well, Mostert's 29 years old.
Right.
Mostert's a guy who's never had more than 150 carries or touches in a year. Like he's never healthy. I mean, this guy literally is never healthy. Jeff Wilson had a torn meniscus. He's likely not to start the season. And he led the team in carries last year with 126. He had 600 yards. He led the team in carries. So for me, I really think it's going to be a Mostert-Sermon split. But I got to take the guy who the team traded up for in the third round in Trey Sermon. And listen, I think Trey Sermon's a nice prospect. I would take Michael Carter over him in a rookie draft. I have taken Michael Carter over him in a rookie draft because what worries me most about Sermon is I like him on the outside. I like him in open field, but I don't like the way he can create for himself for the most part of it.
Sure.
We talked about that during his rookie breakdown. Like he does offer some really good upside in a Kyle Shanahan offense. Any running back does. So I think he's a little bit overblown just because of the fact I think that people are like, it's going to be the Trey Sermon offense. Raheem Mostert, when he's on the field, I mean, the dude's extremely effective. The problem is he's just never on the field. He's always hurt.
Well, and that's been the problem with Trey Sermon as well. I mean, he's been banged up. He was banged up at OU. He was banged up right before coming to Ohio State, and he had to miss, the last game and basically 2 games due to injury as well at Ohio State. So that is a major concern for me as well. I think I would rather sell high right now on Sermon than any of these running backs that are the rookie running backs in this class, because there's just too many unknowns between the landing spot. His own production has been roller coastery, and his injury history has been roller coaster. So there's just too many variables in all of this. As much as I love Shanahan, as much as I love the system, we haven't seen one player be significant for an entire season.
Since Devontae Freeman, Tevin Coleman.
That would be the last
in
time.
Atlanta.
Yep.
Like 7 years ago. Somewhere around right around 6 years ago, somewhere around there. Where they were both like running back ones there for a time. Same thing. Tevin Coleman couldn't stay healthy there. You're right. It's been a hodgepodge, right? It's been a potpourri kind of backfield.
And the counter argument could be, well, they haven't had a running back like Trey Sermon yet. I think if they were getting that guy, they're taking Javonte in the second, or they're taking Najee in the first, or they're taking one of those guys. They're not taking. Actually, Travis Etienne would have been my favorite to go there. I would have loved for him to be in that offense. But
high upside, a guy who highly recruited, went to Oklahoma, he had a great year. Then what happened? He gets banged up. Goes to Ohio State, comes into Ohio State, banged up. Losing carries to Master Teague. Second half of the season comes out, dominates, has the biggest rushing game in Ohio State history in the playoffs.
Playoffs?
So he does offer great upside, and it could come back to be a little burps McGurps. It could be one of those situations where like you rue that trade, right? But I think I would rather be on the side of, hey, give me a 23 first, I'll give you Trey Sermon. Yeah. Hey, Cam Akers owner. Thinks Cam Akers. Well, I don't know. That Russian dude came back after 3 months on his Achilles injury. I was watching that dude in awe last night. I would immediately draft Trey Sermon in the high second and trade him for a 23 first if I had him.
I'd be totally fine with that.
And then going back to George Kittle before we move on real quick.
Stud.
Still my tight end 1, right? Overall.
Yep, -2.
In Dynasty. This is what I want to say to anybody who thinks there's any depletion in George Kittle's value. George Kittle had played in 8 games last year. 8 games. That's it.
Half the season.
Here's his stat line. 48 receptions, 634 yards, and 2 touchdowns. That is gross. That's gross. In 8 games. That is gross. He's gross.
And he left some of those games early with injury.
The offense runs through George Kittle.